Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel Learn Just with Mahesh. So in our interview question series, so this is the next question which I wanted to add to that playlist. So before I read the question, a quick disclaimer. The question which you see on the screen is not something which I've got in any interview in my entire career. This is basically a simulated question. The whole intent of this question is if someone has not seen the resume and they wanted to check your GCP skills via concepts, via architecture, and if possible in 30 minutes via a live implementation. Is it possible? Is what I wanted to show you. And since the question itself has 30 minutes, the video is going to be minimum 20 to 30 minutes. So if you wanted, you can fast forward certain sections. So with that, let's get started. So if someone asks a question similar to the one which you saw in the screen, so what I will do basically is try to show an application which has some network related stuffs, some front end, a back end, some of the good parts of Google Cloud, something like Google Cloud Storage, all those things. So trying to cover almost every components is what I will do. So for that, I would basically, instead of me writing a code, I will use a code which works very well. So for that purpose, I'm going to take from the Google's Cloud's official GitHub page. There is a specific series which is created called as Serverless Expedition. So in that, there is one specific code called as Cloud Run Cloud SQL. So front end, back end. So we'll also see some of the VPC related components. So that's what I'm trying to show as a interview implementation. So first, I wanted to showcase basically my architecture skills. So I'm going to use Lucid chart to show this part. So I'm going to basically add certain images. So first and foremost stuff, I'll add Cloud Run, which is the important component here. Cloud Run, then Cloud SQL instance, and Cloud Run usually in this article, it uses the external IP address, but wanted to showcase the best practices of that. Front end connecting to a database via an external IP address is not a good choice. So in this case, serverless VPC connector is what I'm going to show. So I'm going to insert an SVG, and I have created my own customized image for this. I'll create one more video on this, how to create basically stuffs like this soon. So this is the icon or logo of serverless VPC connector. And if we have serverless VPC connector, one important component which we need is basically the VPC. So I'm going to insert the image for VPC. So it should be something in V. So basically add this. And Cloud Run gets its images from container registry. So I'm going to add that also. I'm not pausing the video. I'm trying to show as much as possible live. So container registry, and lastly a user trying to access the stuffs. So trying to get a user icon. It is not there. This one is a good one. So slightly make it big. That's it. Now let me just change some colors to make sure it looks good. So quickly, this is not required, but just thought I'll show this part. So I'll just try to change the color. So that's something done. Similarly, change the color for this one. So these are the components. As an architect, the most important thing is what line connects what, or what components connects this. So a VPC serverless VPC connector has a dependency on VPC. That is the line which indicates here. And when I create a Cloud SQL instance with internal IP address, it still expects a VPC that is written here. Then container registry, from there only I'm going to read my container image. So that is there. My Cloud Run is going to connect to my serverless VPC connector. So that basically connects to Cloud SQL. So this is the stuff, and basically the user. So if I just increase the font of this, so this is the user. The user is going to access it from public internet. This is the connection. So this is a small diagram which I'll show. By doing this, I'm trying to convey to the interviewer that I have some architecture skills where I can create an architecture quickly. Now the same thing is what I wanted to implement. So as an cloud architect, it's not just creating architecture. If sometimes required, you need to make your hands dirty and show an implementation, maybe for a proof of concept. So that is what I wanted to highlight. So for this part, I'm going to basically create a VPC, serverless VPC access connector, a Cloud SQL instance with internal IP address, then create a Cloud Run, which is going to use a container image. For that, there's going to be a code. The code is going to be taken from a GitHub. So that's the thing which we are going to do. So let's get started. Let's create the VPC, and I'm just only going to create VPC, no subnetworks. The reason is Cloud Run is serverless, and we are going to create a serverless VPC access. So it does not require any subnetwork. So I just wanted to highlight this to the interviewer when I'm doing this. So gcloud, by doing gcloud command, I am also highlighting that I'm comfortable with command line stuffs, networks, create network. The name of the network, I'm going to call it as interview VPC, and the subnetwork mode is going to be custom. We have also seen this in one of our videos. If I just create a subnetwork in in custom mode, it's only going to create the VPC and a default route, default internet gateway route. That's the only thing it's going to do. So let this get created. Once it gets created, basically I'm just going to close this, refresh it. I'll see the VPC. This is the most important stuff. Now, once the VPC is created, you can see that there's going to be only one route, which we have already seen. We see that no firewall rules, nothing. And it's in the entire implementation, we are not going to use any firewall rule. So going back to the architecture, this piece is created. So I'm going to create the serverless VPC access connector. So I'll go create a connector. So I'll give a name as serverless VPC, and I'm going to create everything in US Central. So you can see a network is important. So this line is highlighted here. So I'm going to create a subnetwork. I'm just going to use the range here. It is mentioned here 10.8.0.0, and I cannot create more than 10 instances because I'm using a free trial account. And I'm also going to show, if I just go with the default one, E2 micro, my cost is going to be $24. But if I go with micro, it's going to be $22. I'm saving some stuffs. Also, cost optimization is what I'm trying to show it to the interviewer. So done. So the next part which I wanted to do is basically the Cloud SQL instance. Looking at the code, basically, if I look at my code, I understand it basically uses Postgres. So that's the reason I'm going to create a Postgres database. So this also is going to highlight that the person knows a little bit of code. So create a Postgres instance, and while we create the Postgres instance, we'll make sure we create the most cost optimized solution. So I'm going to call it as interview. Password, I can highlight to the interviewer that the best practice is to always generate a password like this. But for the demonstration purpose, I'm just going to make it as simple demo GCP. And let's use the latest Cloud SQL instance. And Cloud Run is going to be in US Central. Database is also going to be in US Central, so that the connectivity and is going to be very high. The latency is going to be low, and also my egress cost, all those things are going to be basically lesser. So it's a best practice to keep both database and the front end in the same region. That is also I'm going to highlight as a part of the stuffs. So for the demonstration purpose, I'm just going to use single zone so that I don't incur much cost. And the most important thing is lightweight. I'm just trying to show how cost effective I can create a Cloud SQL instance. And the most important part is I'm going to only have private IP address. And when you're creating private IP address, you see the network is important, meaning this connectivity gets answered. So there's a setup which I need to do it. I'm just going to basically allocate new range, sorry, not new range, just use. So once this gets provisioned, I'm just going to finish the setup. In the interim, I'm going to also create a Google Cloud Storage bucket. The reason why I'm creating it is, looking at the source code, they basically mention you need to create a schema. And the schema should have these content is what they are saying. So I'm just going to copy this. I will open a notepad, paste it. I'll just call this as schema.sql. Done. So this file is going to be uploaded into Google Cloud Storage, and that is going to be imported. So I'm going to create a bucket. I'm not just going to simply create a bucket, but also highlight it to the interviewer that in this kind of a scenario, you have to create a region standard storage class. So I'm going to create a bucket called as interview GCS. Hopefully that bucket name is available. This is the most important stuff, not multi-region, region. And again, because my Google Cloud Storage bucket is in US Central, sorry, my Cloud SQL instance is in US Central, it is recommended I keep the bucket also in US Central so that my egress cost can be reduced. Done. It is a standard one. So click on create. Now once the bucket gets created, I'm going to upload my schema stuff. So I'll upload my schema here. Done. Now let me go back and see my VPC servers, serverless VPC access controllers connector is provisioned. This one is also done. Now all I need to do is I don't need any backup. All good. Let me click on create Cloud SQL instance for Postgres. And I'll also highlight it to the interviewer that this is going to take around 7 minutes. 5 to 7 minutes. Highlighting these things also gives basically the interviewer the idea that, okay, this person has provisioned this kind of resources n number of times. He or she knows how long it usually takes. It's basically a value add. We are basically trying to show that we know good amount of GCP skills. So coming to the architecture, basically, so we have finished this piece. Now it is basically the Cloud Run part which we need to do. So for this Cloud Run, I'm going to basically clone this stuff, the entire repository. I'm going to clone it, copy this, go to my Cloud Run section. I'm going to launch my Cloud Shell and clone this. So a little bit of programming is what we know. We can highlight it. So let it clone. Done. Now change the directory to Cloud Run SQL. Now, if you see, there's a Docker file already. So highlighting some more things. So as an architect, having a programming skill is always value add. So I can also highlight that. Now, how do I highlight it? Basically, I wanted to edit some content here. So this is basically an application which is going to show some election related stuffs, a dummy data between two parties. One party name is called as tab, the other party name is called as spaces. So between them is what it's going to show. So what I'm going to do is basically I'm going to show that I can edit the content also. I have that skill set. So it's between tabs versus this thing, my interview. I'm just trying to show that I can edit the stuffs basically. Good. Now the good part is in the source code itself, they have provided Docker image. So the Docker file, all I need to do is build a Docker and push it to the container registry. I don't want to do it in 2 steps. I wanted to show I can use cloud build in this process. So I'm going to use gcloud builds submit -t because there's a Docker file. So gcr.io, and I'm not going to hard code my project ID. I'm going to use a environment variable called as devshell_project ID, which is available only in Cloud Shell. Again, a component to highlight. And also when I'm creating container images, I create a nice path, navigation path, cloud run. Then inside this cloud run, what is the stuff I'm going to do? So this is going to be like slightly organized, well organized. So I'm going to call this as election and version.0. I'm not going to leave any container image untagged. So if I don't put a tag, latest is the one which is going to be taken, which is not a good practice. So always having a tag is a best practice. I'm going to highlight this and then hit enter. So this is going to take a few minutes for it to build a container image. Once it is done, it's going to create a container image, which we will see here. And also I'm going to highlight GCR relies on Google Cloud Storage, meaning once the container image is provisioned, we should see one more bucket here. So that way I know the internal workings of that also is what I'm trying to highlight. So let's see whether our Cloud SQL instance is provisioned or not in the end. So it's still provisioning, but we have got the IP address. So all we need is basically this one. Once the image is built, we should be able to, it's built, we should be able to go to our GCR, refresh it. We see that elections and the version which we did just now uploaded. Now click on deploy to Cloud Run, which is going to basically take us to the Cloud Run page, and we can basically mention all the necessary details. The service name is election. Now the most important piece is I have to give some variables. How do I know that I have to create variables? Because in main.py, looking at main.py code, it shows there are some environment variables. Now this is also going to highlight basically as a cloud architect, I can understand, I may not write code, but I can understand the code someone has written. So these are all the capabilities which would be helpful while doing some proof of concept. So I'm just going to basically add those variables, the port number of the database, then the database username, the password, lastly the database name. Database name, I'm going to call it as election. So I'm going to copy this. Then the password, we know that we gave it as demo GCP. Username, the default database username is Postgres. Port number is always default set to 5432, and the IP address is something which we can get it from here. So you see there's no public IP address, so it's only internal IP address. Added, Good. So we have added all the stuffs. So this database needs to be created. So go to your Cloud SQL instance, click on the Cloud SQL instance. Under the database section, basically create this database. Done. Once the database is created, the schema needs to be imported. Anyway, the file is already uploaded in Google Cloud Storage bucket. All I need to do is basically go to my Cloud SQL instance. There's an option called as import, and I can only import from Google Cloud Storage bucket. This is the container registry related Google Cloud Storage bucket. So here is where we have our schema. So we want to basically export it into election database. Done. That piece is done. So once it is successful, we should be able to basically proceed further. Instead of waiting here, I can switch back here. So this is all good. Now, if I going to use internal IP address, the most important thing is under connections in my cloud run, I have to go with VPC, serverless VPC connector. So if I click on the drop down, I get that connector which we provisioned here. So I go do that. Then since this is an application which is accessible via internet, I'm going to allow this. Done. So looks like everything is good. Let me click on create. So in the next 2 minutes or so, Cloud Run should get provision. So once Cloud Run gets provision, we should be able to get the URL. And if things are all fine, we should be able to click on that URL and start voting. Let's see. Yes, the app is up. So let me click on this. If things are all fine, we should see a welcome page. Tabs versus space, my interview. So meaning the change which we did in our code is also showing. Now it's time to do voting. So tabs, they are leading by 1, they are leading by 2. Now if I click on spaces, they have started their quota. Now if I click on spaces, it's matched. Now I'm going to click on tabs. Tabs is winning by 1 vote. Now how do I show this to the interviewer that everything is getting stored in the Postgres database? So one way, I have to basically log in into this. To log in, I have to log in using a virtual machine which is in the same VPC to this. So meaning I have to create a virtual machine, or I have to have a public IP address and then do it. I don't want to do all those things. What I will do is basically, I wanted to keep it as simple as possible. At the same time, smartly show the concepts which I know to the interviewer. I can export the data. So I'm going to export the data. So those data, I'm going to export it into a Google Cloud Storage bucket. So let it be in CSV format, sorry, SQL format. The database which I wanted is elections, and I will export it to my same data Google Cloud Storage bucket. I'll call this as interview export. Done. The moment I export it, if everything goes fine, I should see a new file here. I already see this file. It's getting exported. So let's wait for this to be completed. Now once it is exported, all I need to do is basically go and look into this content. So what I will do is copy this storage bucket details, go to my Cloud Shell. So I'm just going to minimize this. gsutil cat gs:// interview, hit tab. It should basically auto complete. So this is another feature which I can basically highlight. So I don't need to type the commands is what I can say. Done. Now when I do that, basically I'm going to see my SQL content. And if you see the SQL, 3 odes to tabs, 2 odes to basically spaces. The same thing is what I should see it here. If I go here, see, this is the voting table. So you see the entry 1, 2, 3. 2 for spaces. This proves all the stuffs which I'm doing is basically getting inserted in Cloud SQL instance. Now, as a finishing touch, I also wanted to highlight to the interviewer that we have not created any subnetwork, no firewall rule, but there are some networking components which has been provisioned behind the scene. What are those? Couple of routes are going to be created. So like basically the route information, like this one, when we created our VPC serverless VPC connector, this was the range which we gave. So one for that has been created. The second one is basically VPC peering. So two things. If I click on VPC network peering, you will basically see this. This is where our Cloud SQL instance is going to be created. So a tenant project. In this project only, the Cloud SQL instance is created, and I basically see my routes for this, routes for those information. That's what I see it here. That's it. So if you see, as a cloud architect, I'm able to create architecture, at the same time also implement it, which is working like a charm. So I did not write a single line of code, but as an architect, I know how to reuse a code, do some proof of concept, create architectures, and make this entire stuff work. So that's the video which I wanted to share. It was basically an approach, like how an architect would be in a position to answer the stuffs easily. So if you know the concepts, you can definitely explain your concepts, create an architecture diagram, and also do a live implementation like the one which I showed. So let me know your comments, thoughts on this video. So that's the video which I wanted to share. Thank you for watching.